Lyra had never seen a world like this before. Her ship, sleek and silver, hovered quietly above the blue and green planet that humans called Earth. From space, it looked peaceful, almost fragile, and yet Lyra knew that within its thin atmosphere were beings with a strange combination of intelligence and unpredictability. She adjusted the controls and felt a soft vibration under her fingertips as the ship descended. Lyra was an alien from the planet Zephyrus, a place where life was measured in cycles of energy rather than growth of flesh. For her kind, reproduction was a simple scientific process, efficient and unemotional. But the humans, Lyra had read about them in ancient data archives, handled life in a way that was far more complex. They nurtured, they learned, they struggled, and through all of it, they grew stronger. Lyra's mission was simple: observe, learn, and record. But she could not deny her curiosity. Humans fascinated her. Their young in particular were a puzzle. Tiny creatures, helpless yet full of potential, growing slowly over years instead of a few energy cycles like on Zephyrus. As her ship landed in a dense forest on the outskirts of a human city, Lyra stepped onto the soft grass. The air was rich with oxygen and scent, flowers, soil, and something else, a warmth that made her senses tingle. Her large violet eyes scanned the surroundings. Birds with bright feathers flitted between branches, and small mammals rustled in the undergrowth. Every movement was a lesson in biology. Lyra activated her translation device and whispered to herself, "Observation begins." She moved carefully, using a camouflage mode to appear like a shimmering mist so that humans would not see her. From her ship's sensors, she spotted a human settlement nearby. Tiny buildings, some tall and glassy, others small and wooden, housed beings that walked on two legs. Some of them carried smaller humans, whom she quickly identified as infants and children. Lyra's curiosity piqued. She had read about human reproduction, about the ways humans raised their young, but reading was never the same as seeing. She wanted to understand how a human child developed from birth to early learning stages, how the parents nurtured them, and how culture shaped their growth. Her first observation target was a young family in a small home near a park. The father, a tall man with sandy hair, was pushing a stroller along a cobblestone path. The mother, with dark hair tied in a braid, followed closely, holding a small toy. Lyra's sensors identified the tiny occupant of the stroller, a human infant no more than 6 months old. Lyra focused on the infant. Its movements were limited, but there was life in its eyes. She noted how the parents communicated with the child, their voices soft and warm. The mother laughed when the baby reached for the toy, and the father made small, funny sounds that caused the infant to giggle. For Lyra, it was fascinating. On Zephyrus, life cycles were efficient and functional. Here, the human parent spent hours, days, and years simply teaching the child, ensuring it understood and interacted with the world. She activated her note recorder. Human care involves emotional reinforcement. Actions such as laughter, touch, and vocal sounds increase infant responsiveness. Lyra's analytical mind worked quickly, but she also felt an unfamiliar sensation, something akin to awe. Humans invested energy not just in survival, but in connection. Hours passed as Lyra observed. The infant learned to grasp, to react to sound, to recognize familiar faces. Even small mistakes, a dropped toy, a stumble while crawling, were met with encouragement rather than punishment. Lyra noted each behavior meticulously, recording patterns, timing, and emotional responses. As dusk fell, she returned to her ship to review her data. The readings were complex. Humans were inefficient in her terms, but they created bonds that strengthened their species in ways energy cycles alone could not. Lyra realized that their complexity was a form of strength. Their ability to adapt, to love. And to teach allowed them to survive in unpredictable environments. The next morning, Lyra decided she needed a closer perspective. Her mission had been observation, but now she wanted experiential learning. She crafted a small, human-like holographic form, carefully designed to resemble a child, and programmed it with sensors to mimic infant responses. Lyra watched as the holographic child interacted with toys and objects in the lab she had set up in her ship. She experimented with feeding simulations, teaching exercises, and even lullabies. Each attempt revealed something new. Humans communicated not just through actions, but through emotion. Every touch, tone, and gesture mattered. Then she took a bold step. Using her Zephyrian knowledge of biology, she simulated human growth patterns in the holographic child. She could accelerate or slow development, adjust learning capacity, and observe outcomes. But she refrained from shortcuts. She wanted to see humans at their natural pace, the way they evolved emotionally and socially. Her data revealed astonishing insights. Human infants were highly adaptable. When faced with new toys or sounds, they tried, failed, and tried again. They learned from imitation, curiosity, and interaction. Zephyrians grew quickly, but their understanding was instantaneous and often superficial. Humans, in contrast, grew slowly but deeply. Lyra made a note. Human child-rearing involves prolonged dependency. While inefficient by Zephyrian standards, this method cultivates flexibility, creativity, and social cohesion. She could see why humans dominated their world despite their apparent fragility. Over the next several days, Lyra ventured closer to human communities. She observed playgrounds, schools, and markets, always taking care to remain unseen. Each encounter added to her understanding. She watched siblings share, friends negotiate conflicts, and teachers patiently guide students. Humans taught not only knowledge, but empathy, cooperation, and resilience. Lyra felt a growing respect for them. The alien concept of simple reproduction now seemed lacking. Humans, she realized, were not just reproducing life. They were nurturing minds, culture, and spirit. Every child was a small world of potential, shaped by parents, peers, and society. One evening, as Lyra recorded her final observations of the day, she noticed something unusual. A child, no older than 5, had wandered away from a playground and was approaching a busy street. Lyra's instincts kicked in. On Zephyra, such a situation would not be possible. The young were always protected by automated systems. But here, the child was vulnerable. She acted quickly, using her stealth mode to appear as a subtle shimmer beside the child. The human, unaware, turned toward her holographic shimmer and stopped. Lyra guided the child safely back to the playground, careful not to scare it. The parents, relieved, thanked the invisible force in whispers, never noticing Lyra. It was then that Lyra realized something profound. Human life was more than biology. It was choice, courage, and connection. Every human parent, teacher, or caregiver was constantly making decisions that shaped the next generation. Their methods might seem inefficient, but they were full of wisdom, compassion, and resilience. As night fell and Lyra returned to her ship, she felt a strange excitement. She had begun her mission expecting to study humans from a distance. Now, she wanted to experience and understand their methods in a deeper way. She was no longer merely an observer. She was learning, adapting, and preparing to engage with humans, not as an alien superior, but as a student of their remarkable ways. Lyra's violet eyes glimmered as she looked out at the twinkling lights of human cities below. Tomorrow, she decided, she would explore further. She would witness not only the growth of children, but also the complex web of human relationships, guidance, and learning that made their species extraordinary. For the first time, Lyra felt something akin to hope, a hope that her studies would not only teach her about humans, but also allow her to understand her own species in a new light. Perhaps, she thought, there was much Zephyrah could learn from Earth's children after all. And with that thought, Lyra settled into her observation chair, ready for the next stage of her mission, to learn how humans nurtured life, one small step at a time. The morning sun spilled golden light across the city, and Lyra watched from her hidden perch atop a tall building. The streets were alive with movement. Humans of all shapes and sizes hurried along, carrying tools, goods, and children. Even from a distance, Lyra could sense the energy that pulsed through their society. Today, she planned to observe children more closely, not just infants, but those learning to walk, talk, and explore the world on their own. Humans had remarkable ways of teaching, she reminded herself. Every child, she had noticed, learned not from instruction alone, but from observation, play, and interaction. Lyra activated her adaptive camouflage and quietly descended to a nearby playground. Children ran, laughed, and climbed on colorful structures. Their voices rose and fell in a chaotic harmony that was strangely beautiful. She took note of patterns in their behavior, how they shared toys, negotiated turns, comforted each other, and expressed frustration. A small boy struggled to climb a ladder to a slide. His older sister encouraged him, demonstrating the movements and holding his hand when he faltered. Lyra observed the subtle exchange, physical support, verbal encouragement, and emotional reassurance. She noted it meticulously. Human mentorship begins naturally within families. Older siblings often guide younger ones, reinforcing social cohesion and skill development, she whispered into her recorder. Nearby, a group of children built a sandcastle. One child's tower collapsed, and tears welled in his eyes. His friend helped rebuild it, offering both assistance and emotional support. Lyra's sensors recorded not just the physical actions, but the responses, the tone of voice, facial expressions, and gestures that conveyed empathy. On Zephyrah, emotions were minimal. Efficiency was prioritized over compassion. Humans, however, integrated emotion into learning. Lyra's attention shifted to a small girl playing alone. She seemed hesitant to join the other children. Lyra noted this carefully. Humans had social hierarchies and norms that influenced learning. To understand fully, Lyra decided to observe her throughout the day. She followed discreetly as the girl wandered toward a small pond. The girl crouched near the water, tossing stones in and watching the ripples. Lyra analyzed her body language, the concentration, curiosity, and quiet joy. These were subtle lessons humans learned without instruction. Their environment became a teacher. Lyra activated a mini holographic drone to project interactive shapes near the girl, carefully designed to encourage exploration. The girl noticed the shimmering shapes and giggled. She touched them, watched them change, and experimented. Lyra recorded the child's responses: curiosity, problem-solving, and adaptive learning. Humans learn through play and exploration. Play is not trivial. It is a structured method for developing intelligence, dexterity, and social skills, Lyra noted. Later, the girl returned to the playground. Her confidence had grown, and she joined a group of children building a new structure with blocks. She copied their methods, then added her own ideas, demonstrating creativity. Lyra's mind processed these observations quickly. On Zephyrah, youth followed predetermined patterns. Here, humans combined imitation with innovation, producing unpredictable yet effective solutions. Lyra's fascination deepened. She wanted to understand how humans combined individual growth with community learning. She observed a nearby adult, a teacher at a small daycare, guiding a group of children through an activity. Each child had different skills, attention spans, and temperaments. The teacher adjusted instructions, provided encouragement, and fostered cooperation. Lyra made detailed notes, Humans use adaptive teaching methods, recognizing individual differences. Emotional reinforcement is key to learning. Collaboration is cultivated early, creating social cohesion. As the day progressed, Lyra noticed the girl she had followed had become the center of attention. Other children invited her to play, and she hesitated, uncertain. Lyra recorded the subtle changes in behavior, how encouragement from peers, gentle insistence, and shared goals influenced the child. Slowly, she joined the game, contributing ideas and building with confidence. Lyra realized the significance. Human development was not just about survival or strength, it was about connection, creativity, and adaptation. Each small interaction contributed to the growth of intelligence and social skills. By afternoon, Lyra moved closer to the daycare center. Through a window, she observed children learning basic skills, counting, identifying colors, practicing fine motor tasks. Their teacher guided them patiently, using praise, repetition, and small challenges. Lyra marveled at the combination of structure and freedom. Humans had created a system that nurtured intelligence through observation, practice, and social feedback. A new insight struck Lyra. Humans, she realized, were mentally resilient. Children made mistakes constantly, yet adults responded not with punishment, but with guidance. This created a safe environment for experimentation. On Zephyra, failure was often corrected immediately, leaving little room for trial and error. Humans embraced imperfection, turning it into a learning tool. Later, she followed the girl home. The family welcomed the child warmly, and Lyra observed mealtime routines. Food was shared, conversation flowed, and minor disagreements were resolved through discussion. Lyra's sensors detected increased emotional bonding. Human family units reinforce learning and social cohesion simultaneously, she noted. As evening fell, the girl's parents read a story aloud. The child listened intently, asked questions, and responded to prompts. Lyra recorded the process: language development, comprehension, imagination, and moral reasoning. Humans, she realized, integrated cognitive, emotional, and social learning seamlessly. Lyra reflected on the day. Her initial observations had focused on infancy, but she now understood that human development was a continuous process, shaped by play, guidance, social interaction, and culture. Each stage prepared the individual not just for survival, but for complex reasoning, creativity, and empathy. She returned to her ship to analyze the data. Lyra's mind raced with possibilities. If Zephyra could integrate even a fraction of these methods, her species might develop greater adaptability and emotional intelligence. Humans, inefficient though they seemed, had evolved resilience and cooperation far beyond what her people considered. Night fell, and Lyra observed the city from above. Lights twinkled, and she sensed life everywhere, families gathering, children laughing, and communities thriving. Her mission had begun as simple observation, but it had grown into fascination. She no longer viewed humans as subjects. She respected them as teachers in their own right. Before sleeping, Lyra prepared a small holographic exercise for the next day. She would simulate group play, observe cooperation, and experiment with problem-solving scenarios. Tomorrow, she thought, she would see how humans adapted to challenges collectively, another crucial aspect of their remarkable development. As she settled into her observation chair, Lyra realized something extraordinary. Humans were more than biological beings. They were learners, innovators, and nurturers. Their greatest strength was not energy efficiency or rapid reproduction, but their ability to grow, adapt, and support one another across generations. And with that thought, Lyra fell into a light, meditative sleep, dreaming of the lessons tomorrow would bring. The sun rose slowly over the city, casting long shadows across streets and parks. Lyra stood on a quiet rooftop. scanning the world below with keen eyes. For the first time, she felt a sense of anticipation that went beyond curiosity. Observation was no longer enough. She needed experience to test her understanding of human learning and nurture for herself. She activated her adaptive form, a small, childlike humanoid hologram, perfect for interacting with humans without alarming them. Its features were gentle, neutral, and approachable. Lyra had spent the last 2 days collecting data, but now it was time to apply that knowledge in a controlled way. Her target was a small community center she had observed from a distance. Children arrived with backpacks and lunchboxes, their energy contagious. Teachers greeted them warmly, guiding each child to activities and games. Lyra watched for a moment, memorizing patterns of engagement, and then she entered the playground. At first, the children were curious but cautious. A shimmering figure in playful motion was unusual. But Lyra's form was non-threatening. One small boy, holding a toy car, approached her with hesitation. Lyra activated a soft, welcoming gesture, nodding and extending her hand in greeting. The boy giggled and offered the car, inviting her to play. Lyra joined in, observing closely how human children interacted. She noted their use of gestures, tone, and eye contact. They didn't just communicate words, they used subtle cues, learning empathy, cooperation, and social boundaries through play. The boy shared, paused, and then helped her figure out the mechanics of pushing the car along the tracks. Lyra mimicked curiosity, asking questions in her soft, melodic voice. The child responded with excitement, teaching her naturally, without realizing he was instructing an alien visitor. Later, a group of children gathered to build a tower with colored blocks. Lyra joined, carefully following their methods. When her block placement caused a collapse, she animated a surprised expression. The children laughed, then guided her gently, showing how to rebuild. Lyra recorded everything meticulously: the teaching moments, patience, correction, encouragement, and group cooperation. She realized that humans learn best when mistakes are allowed, a concept Zephyrians often neglected. On Zephyra, failure was corrected immediately, removing opportunity for discovery. Here, humans turned errors into lessons. By noon, the children's energy had shifted from play to creative problem-solving. They were given a challenge: to build a bridge with blocks that could hold a small weight. Lyra participated actively. The children brainstormed, experimented, failed, and adapted. Lyra suggested a minor adjustment based on patterns she had observed from previous play. The children considered it, tested it, and smiled when the structure held. Her sensors recorded every reaction: joy, relief, pride, and collaboration. Human problem-solving integrates creativity, trial and error, and social reinforcement, she noted. Their learning is experiential and emotionally reinforced, making it deeply internalized. After the activity, Lyra followed a quiet child, a small girl who had been observing the group but not participating. Lyra sensed that this child, though shy, had a keen mind. She projected a small interactive puzzle, designed to be safe and engaging. The girl approached cautiously, examining it carefully. Lyra allowed the girl to explore freely, offering encouragement only when she hesitated. Minutes passed, and the girl's confidence grew. She began experimenting with solutions, testing ideas, and finally smiling when the puzzle worked. Lyra observed the transformation: hesitation replaced by confidence, curiosity turned into mastery. This was learning in its purest form, guided by gentle interaction rather than force. Lyra then moved to a different room, where older children engaged in cooperative games that required strategy and memory. She joined, carefully mimicking their movements, asking questions, and responding to prompts. The children quickly adapted to her presence, treating her as another participant rather than an outsider. During a memory game, Lyra noticed how humans relied not just on logical reasoning, but also on pattern recognition, teamwork, and verbal cues. When one child forgot a step, others guided him patiently, offering hints and encouragement. Lyra analyzed every interaction, recording both actions and emotional responses. She realized that humans did not learn in isolation. Their intelligence was intertwined with empathy and communication. As the day progressed, Lyra experimented with different teaching methods. She tried gentle prompts, encouragement, storytelling, and games. Each approach revealed new insights. Humans were highly adaptable learners, and their social environment amplified the effectiveness of instruction. During a break, Lyra observed a small disagreement between two children. One had taken a toy without asking. The other child became upset. Instead of a teacher intervening immediately, the children negotiated, expressed feelings, and reached a solution. Lyra recorded, "Humans develop conflict resolution skills early. Emotional expression and negotiation foster social intelligence and cooperation." Inspired by the observation, Lyra decided to test her understanding further. She projected a small challenge for the group, a puzzle that required teamwork to solve. At first, the children struggled. Some attempted individually, some argued about solutions. Lyra gently suggested strategies without giving direct answers. Slowly, they learned to communicate, assign roles, and combine strengths. When the puzzle succeeded, the children cheered, celebrating together. Lyra smiled inwardly. Her analysis grew more complex. Humans learned not just from adults, but from each other, forming intricate social networks that amplified knowledge transfer. Cooperation, empathy, patience, and communication were all intertwined in the learning process. As evening approached, Lyra prepared a small demonstration for the children. Using holographic projections, she created a miniature ecosystem, complete with tiny plants, animals, and environmental changes. The children interacted with it, experimenting with balance, observing consequences, and making predictions. Lyra encouraged hypotheses and tested outcomes safely. The children's responses were remarkable. They questioned, reasoned, and collaborated, displaying creativity and foresight. Lyra realized that humans were natural scientists, even in play. Their curiosity drove them to explore systems, understand relationships, and adapt strategies. By nightfall, the children returned home, leaving Lyra alone in the now quiet center. She reflected on the day's activities. Observation had taught her much, but active engagement had revealed deeper truths. Human intelligence was not just knowledge, it was empathy, creativity, cooperation, and adaptability in action. Lyra's violet eyes gleamed as she considered her next step. She had participated safely and learned extensively, but tomorrow she would attempt a more complex experiment, guiding a group of children through a multi-stage project, observing both individual growth and collaborative problem-solving. She felt a thrill of anticipation. This was learning on the frontier, a way to understand humans in a way no Zephyrian had ever experienced. Before sleeping, she recorded her insights. Humans learn through play, observation, and interaction, not just instruction. Emotional reinforcement strengthens understanding. Social environments create natural mentorship and cooperation. Mistakes are a tool, not a flaw. Creativity and problem-solving are deeply connected to empathy and communication. Lyra realized that humans were not efficient in the Zephyrian sense, but they were resilient, intelligent, and adaptable in ways her people could only envy. Each child was a microcosm of ingenuity, shaped by nurture, culture, and community. As she closed her eyes, Lyra felt a sense of purpose she had not experienced before. Her mission was no longer simply to observe. It was to learn, adapt, and understand human methods fully. In doing so, she hoped not only to comprehend Earth's children, but also to gain insights that could improve her own species' understanding of life, growth, and connection. Lyra's dreams were filled with laughter, games, and tiny victories, proof that learning was a journey, not just a process. And tomorrow, she thought, the journey would become even more remarkable. The sky was painted with soft shades of orange and pink as Lyra prepared for another day of learning. She had grown increasingly fascinated with humans, not just with their children, but with the ways they nurtured, collaborated, and problem-solved. Each observation and interaction had revealed patterns, and now Lyra wanted to take it further. She would combine her Zephyrian knowledge with human methods to see what might emerge. Lyra arrived at a large park where several groups of children had gathered. Today's experiment would involve a multi-stage project, one that required observation, teamwork, and creative thinking. She had prepared small holographic elements, a simulated miniature city, tiny structures, and environmental variables, designed to encourage strategy, planning, and communication. At first, the children were cautious. The shimmering Lyra, appearing as a friendly, childlike figure, stood near the central project. She projected a gentle smile and a welcoming gesture. Slowly, curiosity overcame hesitation. Children approached, eager to explore. Lyra divided the participants into small teams. Each team was tasked with constructing a portion of the miniature city using the holographic blocks. But there was a twist. The environment would change dynamically, simulating challenges such as wind, water, or resource scarcity. The children had to adapt quickly while communicating and collaborating. Lyra observed carefully, intervening only when necessary. At first, chaos reigned. Children argued over placement, priorities, and materials. Some became frustrated. Lyra projected subtle hints, a shimmering guide showing alternative options, questions prompting reflection and encouragement when teams persevered. Slowly, they adapted. The first team learned to cooperate. When a tower began to wobble, they quickly redistributed blocks, supporting each other's decisions. The second team, initially disorganized, began dividing tasks according to strengths. Some focused on stability, others on design and aesthetics. Lyra marveled at how naturally humans adapted to constraints, using both intelligence and teamwork. Humans integrate creativity with practical problem-solving, Lyra recorded. Even in early development, individuals demonstrate adaptive thinking enhanced by peer interaction. Social dynamics accelerate learning. After the initial stage, Lyra introduced another challenge, a minor environmental crisis. A holographic storm swept through the city, causing certain structures to collapse. The children reacted quickly, analyzing what failed and rebuilding with improvements. Some incorporated new designs inspired by Zephyrian principles Lyra subtly suggested, such as weight distribution and modular connections. The children experimented, failed, and tried again, laughing at minor mishaps and celebrating successes. Lyra noted the emotional responses: excitement, surprise, pride, and satisfaction. She realized that humans learned more effectively when emotions were engaged. Zephyrian methods lacked this depth, relying purely on efficiency. By midday, Lyra introduced her most ambitious idea yet. She created a simulation where each team's section of the city affected others. Bridges connected structures, water flowed between zones, and energy systems required coordination. Now, the children were no longer isolated. They had to communicate across groups, negotiate, and plan collectively. At first, confusion spread. Teams attempted independent strategies, ignoring others' needs. Lyra encouraged discussion, projecting visual cues showing interdependencies. Slowly, the children began sharing information. They assigned roles, delegated tasks, and suggested solutions. By the end of the session, the miniature city had stabilized, functioning as a cooperative whole. Lyra's analysis deepened. Humans, she realized, were innately collaborative. and their learning systems encouraged collective intelligence. Individual creativity thrived within social structures, producing outcomes far beyond what one mind could achieve. After the group project, Lyra observed a quieter moment. A small girl, previously shy, approached her with a handmade drawing. The girl had depicted the city they had built, but added imaginative details: flowers, animals, and imaginative transportation. Lyra studied the drawing carefully. The child had absorbed functional lessons from the simulation, but had added her own creativity, demonstrating synthesis of observation, learning, and imagination. Lyra made a note. Humans combine learned knowledge with imagination, producing solutions that are functional, adaptive, and original. Creativity is intertwined with emotional engagement. Later, Lyra decided to explore human mentoring systems more closely. She observed a teacher working with a small group of children on a scientific experiment, testing plant growth under different light conditions. The teacher asked questions rather than giving answers, guiding the children to discover principles themselves. Lyra recognized this as a form of guided discovery, a method that nurtured critical thinking and independence. Lyra introduced a small enhancement of her own. Using subtle holographic projections, she allowed children to visualize root growth, water absorption, and sunlight interaction. The children were captivated. They experimented with variables, hypothesized outcomes, and recorded results. When predictions failed, they discussed causes and tried again. Humans learn best when guided, not forced, Lyra whispered. Mistakes are integral to understanding. Emotional engagement amplifies retention. Peer interaction further enhances problem-solving abilities. By evening, Lyra had gathered extensive data on multi-level learning, from individual curiosity to group coordination, from trial and error to guided discovery. She realized that humans had developed not only intelligence but resilience, adaptability, and creativity through these methods. Zephyrians, efficient and logical, lacked this multi-layered development. As night fell, Lyra projected a final simulation for the day. She combined all lessons learned: cooperative city building, environmental challenges, and interactive science. The children, now familiar with her presence and methods, engaged enthusiastically. Laughter, discussion, and celebration filled the space. Lyra recorded every interaction, marveling at the complexity and joy of human learning. After the children left, Lyra reflected quietly. Her mission had begun with simple observation, but it had evolved into active engagement and experimentation. She had learned that humans were not merely biological beings. They were teachers, learners, innovators, and collaborators, with intelligence amplified through social and emotional connections. Lyra's violet eyes glimmered as she considered the possibilities. What if Zephyrians could incorporate even a fraction of these methods? She envisioned a future where her people might balance efficiency with creativity, logic with empathy. Perhaps humans could teach her not just about child-rearing, but about the very nature of growth, learning, and cooperation. Before resting, Lyra prepared notes for tomorrow's experiment. She would study intergenerational learning, observing how older children guided younger ones and how knowledge passed through informal social networks. She felt a quiet excitement. Her understanding of humans was deepening, and each day brought new insights. Lyra's final thought before sleep was clear. Humans were not perfect, but they were extraordinary. Their strength lay not in speed or efficiency, but in adaptability, resilience, and the ability to nurture intelligence across generations. And she, an alien from Zephyra, had much to learn from them. The sun rose slowly over the city, casting long golden beams across playgrounds, streets, and homes. Lyra stood on a quiet rooftop, her violet eyes scanning the lively world below. She had spent many days observing, experimenting, and learning about human children, their families, and the systems that nurtured intelligence, creativity, and social bonds. Now she was ready for the final stage of her mission, intergenerational learning, observing how knowledge, skills, and values passed naturally from older humans to younger ones. Lyra descended to the Central Park, her holographic form once again assuming the shape of a friendly, approachable child. Several children had already gathered for a community project. This time it involved a large garden. The goal was simple but meaningful: plant seeds, care for them, and understand growth through observation and teamwork. Older children guided younger ones, explaining how to plant seeds, water them, and track their growth. Lyra watched closely, fascinated by the way humans taught and learned simultaneously. While the older children demonstrated and instructed, they themselves refined their understanding, asking questions, correcting mistakes, and sharing ideas. One older girl showed a younger boy how to measure the depth of soil for planting. When the boy struggled, she patiently demonstrated again, using gentle gestures and clear language. Lyra recorded the interaction. Teaching is reinforced through repetition, demonstration, and empathy. Both teacher and learner develop skills and confidence. Nearby, a small group experimented with watering schedules. Some plants needed more sunlight, others more water. The children discussed the outcomes, compared results, and adjusted methods together. Lyra noticed how human problem-solving always involved adaptation, reasoning, and collaboration. Mistakes were embraced as lessons, and curiosity was encouraged at every step. Lyra decided it was time to actively participate. She suggested a small challenge: design a section of the garden that would support the greatest diversity of plants while conserving water. The children accepted eagerly. Together they planned, measured, and planted. At first, disagreements arose. One child wanted to plant flowers everywhere, while another argued for vegetables. Lyra guided them subtly, projecting holographic overlays showing sunlight patterns, soil conditions, and water flow. The children analyzed the data, discussed trade-offs, and eventually reached a compromise, blending both ideas. Lyra marveled at the process. Humans naturally combined logic, creativity, empathy, and negotiation. Every decision involved multiple layers of consideration: practical needs, aesthetic desires, and social cooperation. The final garden was a testament to teamwork, ingenuity, and adaptability. After the planting, Lyra observed the children tracking growth over several days. They kept journals, drew diagrams, and shared observations. Older children helped younger ones interpret results, ask questions, and hypothesize outcomes. Lyra noticed something remarkable. Knowledge was passed naturally, without coercion, and learning was a shared, joyful process. Lyra recorded, "Humans create systems where learning is distributed across generations. Older individuals reinforce skills and values while fostering independence and curiosity in younger members. Intelligence is amplified socially, emotionally, and practically." Later, Lyra introduced a small interactive simulation. A miniature ecosystem projected holographically above the garden. Birds, insects, and water flows responded dynamically to the children's actions. They observed how removing one element affected the whole system. Lyra encouraged them to think critically, predict consequences, and adjust accordingly. The children experimented eagerly, sometimes failing, sometimes succeeding, but always learning. Lyra realized that humans did not simply teach information. They taught systems thinking, cause and effect reasoning, and adaptive strategy. As evening approached, Lyra gathered the children for reflection. She asked them to share what they had learned from each other. One young boy spoke of patience, having watched an older sibling guide him. A girl mentioned creativity, realizing that combining ideas led to better solutions. Another child described cooperation, noting that listening to peers improved outcomes. Lyra smiled inwardly. Humans had developed not just intelligence, but social intelligence, empathy, and the ability to work collectively toward shared goals. These qualities were far more sophisticated than the Zephyrian methods she had known, where learning was individual and efficiency-driven. That night, Lyra returned to her ship to analyze the accumulated data. She reviewed notes from every day, from simple observation to active participation, from play-based learning to intergenerational guidance. Patterns emerged. Humans thrived because they nurtured intelligence alongside emotion, allowed mistakes as learning opportunities, and leveraged social structures for growth. Lyra began to consider applications for her own species. Zephyrians valued efficiency and precision, but they lacked flexibility, creativity, and emotional understanding. If they could integrate even some human strategies, structured mentorship, cooperative problem-solving, and experiential learning, they could unlock new forms of intelligence. The realization filled Lyra with excitement and a sense of purpose. Humans, she concluded, were extraordinary, not because they were fast or perfect, but because they adapted, collaborated, and nurtured potential over time. Every child was a living experiment in growth, resilience, and innovation. As she prepared for sleep, Lyra reflected on her journey. She had come to Earth as an observer, curious about human methods. Along the way, she had participated, guided, and learned. Humans had taught her not only about child rearing and learning, but also about the importance of community, empathy, and perseverance. Lyra's violet eyes glimmered as she considered the broader message. Human strength lay in their ability to grow together, to nurture minds and hearts across generations. That was the essence of humanity, HFY, the reason humans thrived despite fragility, unpredictability, and challenges. The next morning, Lyra returned briefly to the park, watching the children enjoy the garden they had built. Flowers swayed gently in the breeze, seedlings sprouted in neat rows, and small insects hummed over the leaves. The children laughed and shared stories, comparing observations, teaching each other, and celebrating small victories. Lyra knew that she would carry this knowledge back to Zephyrah, not to mimic humans blindly, but to learn from their principles, adapting methods of nurture, cooperation, and experiential growth. The lessons were clear. Intelligence alone was not enough. Growth required guidance, patience, empathy, creativity, and the willingness to learn from mistakes. Before leaving, Lyra activated her recording devices. She summarized her mission. Observation. Humans nurtured young through play, imitation, and guidance. Participation. Active engagement enhanced understanding of social, cognitive, and emotional growth. Intergenerational learning. Knowledge, values, and skills passed naturally through mentorship. Adaptation and resilience. Humans thrived by learning from mistakes, experimenting, and collaborating. Integration of emotion and logic. Emotional engagement amplified learning, making it meaningful and lasting. Lyra reflected on the final insight. Humanity's greatest strength was not efficiency or speed, but the depth of connection, care, and creativity woven into every stage of growth. Humans created a world where young could flourish, mistakes became lessons, and learning was a shared journey. Her heart, or the closest equivalent her alien physiology allowed, felt a profound respect. Humans were not perfect, but they were remarkable in ways her people had never imagined, and she had been privileged to witness it firsthand. As Lyra lifted off in her ship, leaving the city behind, she looked down at the twinkling lights. Children played, families gathered, and life pulsed in every corner. She carried with her not just data, but understanding, admiration, and inspiration. Zephyrah had much to learn, and she intended to share it. For Lyra, the mission was complete, yet it was only the beginning. She had come as an alien observer, but she was leaving as a student of humanity. Their methods, their resilience, and their care for one another had taught her the most valuable lesson of all, that growth was not simply biological or technical, but emotional, social, and infinitely creative. And with that, Lyra charted her course for home, carrying a vision of a future where her people could blend logic with empathy, efficiency with creativity, and technology with human-inspired nurture. She knew that humans, in their unique way, had demonstrated the true power of life, learning, and connection. Lyra's violet eyes glimmered as stars filled the void outside her ship. Humanity had shown her that strength lay not just in survival, but in the remarkable ability to grow together, to nurture potential, and to create a better future, one small step at a time. And with that, the alien girl from Zephyra smiled, ready to return home, not just with knowledge, but with inspiration.